The bandwidth for this episode of the AR-15 podcast is sponsored by the Firearms Radio Network. Firearmsradio.tv.
Welcome to episode number 79 of the AR-15 podcast. I'm your host, Reed Snyder, and with me today is JW Ramp. This is the podcast about your favorite black rifle. This show is for you, whether you're building your first AR or you've been building ARs for years. There is something we can all do to take our black rifle to the next level. JW, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great. Just been packing up the Mini full of all my shooting gear.
Now, you're living the life of Riley, where you get to go out and actually spend a lot of the hard-earned ducats that you collect on fun things like shooting real live ammunition and going places where you are allowed to shoot live ammunition. So I'm filled with envy and jealousy right this very minute. So
yep, I'm gonna step into the world of shooting somewhere other than the square range and take one of the EAG tactical classes over in Ohio. We're doing a shoot house for 4 days. So just looking at the weather, and it looks pretty wet and hot, but other than that, I'm really looking forward to it.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and start the show off right by letting our listeners know that it is Brownells who helps make the show possible. And we want to remind you not to forget that Brownells is there for you anytime you make a mistake, like when Jake shoots a takedown pen detent across his avocado green linoleum flooring and it skids under the cabinets. And I think we all know what that's like. So let's kind of review the parts of our build at play this week. And we've got our lower receiver. We've assembled a good portion of the Colt lower receiver parts kit and trigger mechanism. But this week we're attaching the buttstock mounting kit for our Magpul rifle. And we chose the DPMS buttstock mounting kit because A, it's for the A2 rifle stock, and B, they make some pretty solid equipment in that range. So Brownells is a big carrier of the DPMS products, and we thought that we would go with what they recommend for mounting your buttstock.
Oh, there it is right there.
Oh, I'm sorry for that huge noise. That was me clanging all of my recording equipment. And I do want you to know, listeners, that we have invested in some new recording equipment, so hopefully we'll be giving you a much better product here this week. So if you go to the YouTube video, you will see me dangling the lower receiver with its newly mounted A2 buttstock kit from DPMS.
Now, I've never used one of those before. It looks like it's a completely flush buffer tube. There's no little slots in it or anything, because obviously it's not going to be adjustable.
Well, and here's the thing that I think is really worth pointing out. When you've got a choice of what you're going to mount, you're going to go with one of two things. If it's going to be an A2 style stock, which you can see in the Magpul PRS, a standard A2 buttstock, the Magpul rifle stock that we chose, the MOE, they all use the same buffer tube system, the receiver extension, so to speak. And it's basically a one-piece device. It has threads where you would expect to find them on our receiver extension. However, it has a collar that basically threads flush to the lower receiver, and there is no lip that extends off the bottom of it, which catches your buffer detent. So it's a different form factor than you're going to see in your standard A2, your standard carbine collapsible receiver extension, collapsible stock receiver extension.
Now,
Another thing.
is there also a what do you call it? A receiver end plate, or is it just kind of open?
No, it's just kind of open. And what's going to happen is where that milled opening is going to be an indexing knob on the front of your stock.
Okay.
It's going to slide onto that, and it's going to put the knob into that milled out spot, and it's going to keep it from rotating off that axis.
Now, are there some sort of grub screws or something inside the stock that fix it, or it's right there on the end, huh?
Yep, it is just one screw. It's a pretty heavy-duty screw, threads right into the end. If you're using the A2, you'll have an extension piece, which is about a 3/4 inch, 1 inch piece of plastic that goes over the tip of this, and basically it's just a big washer, and it's going to fill up that void. And the screw for the A2 stock is a lot longer than what you would find in, say, the PRS or the MOE stock that we have. So it's a different kind of install. It's going to be a little different from a standard buffer you'd find on a collapsible stock. And one of the things that you have to remember is that detent that holds your buffer in place is on a spring. And regardless of which of the two tubes you're going to be threading into the lower receiver, I think the big thing to remember is that with that detent on top of a spring, you want to be sure you're not going to shoot that across your linoleum flooring. So I always like to thread that thing just up to the end of it and then start trying to hold it down, because you only get 1 or 2 more rotations before it'll actually catch the lip of that, and you won't have to worry about it.
Now, isn't there another spring that kind of gets covered up by the receiver end plate for the rear takedown pin or something?
There is, but just like in a standard lower, the stock itself is going to trap that spring.
Okay.
In this version, the lower has basically a threaded pin that captures the spring, and it's oriented through the grip. And so you'll see that there is no space at the end of this for that spring.
Okay.
Of course, on this particular lower receiver, that's going to require you to clip a few coils off the end of that spring so it's shorter and it fits in that space. But it basically indexes, vertically from the bottom of the space where the grip connects all the way into the housing. And in fact, I think you can see
right next to where the detent for the safety selector is as well.
Yes, they're both parallel, and you can kind of see that detent glinting right there. It's
okay, yeah, there you go.
So,
well, yeah, we've been kind of talking about this fancy lower you're holding up, but I don't think we really went over why you're building it.
Why I'm using it?
No, why we're talking about this. The fact that we're going to be giving it away to the listeners.
I was kind of hoping that you wouldn't remind people and that maybe we could get to the end of this and everybody would have forgotten. But, you're right. Cat's out of the bag, and it was far too long ago for me to hide or obscure the fact we're having a giveaway, and so that is why we're talking about this. In fact, our giveaway is being sponsored by Brownells, which is why we direct you to the website, because every single thing that we're directing you to the website for is everything that they provided to us. Every single piece is available. So if anybody out there wants to build this rifle before I get a chance to complete it and hand it off to a lucky listener, you've got the recipe sitting right in our show notes in episode number 75.
There you go.
Brownells is really a wonderful company. They have an outstanding policy of supporting everything they sell, 100% money-back satisfaction guaranteed. And so I just don't think that you could find a better partner in the firearms industry than Brownells, and that is why I think we all tend to not only really talk in glowing terms about what they do for the show, but I myself spend a great deal of my time on the Brownells website buying things that I think I need. I don't tell my wife what I think I need, but I think I need it, so I get it.
Yeah, we've got a move coming up here at the end of the month, and I still haven't started packing up the gun shop. So, or the gun vault, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, there might be something at the Brownells website to help you on that front too.
Yeah, so if you're looking for parts at Brownells, you can go to ar15podcast.com/parts. Any of the links in our show notes will take you right over to the product pages, like Reed mentioned. And yeah, let's get into it. I've got a tip kind of the week, something that I ran into the last couple times I hit the range, and it's about choosing the right trigger. I have one of the real nice Geisley Super 3-gun triggers in my SBR, and it's a real slick trigger. Haven't had any problems with it. It's interesting in the fact that it is a super smooth take-up. You just start applying pressure, and it just smoothly moves to the rear, and then the gun goes off however far into the trigger. If it's an eighth of an inch or a quarter inch, something like that, it's just kind of after a certain distance, and the gun just goes off real smooth. Now that's great for shooting real quick, whether you're doing some sort of competition or an application like that, a very active application. But if you're actually taking time with every single round, and you're maybe sitting at a bench or something like that, it might not be the best choice for you. Now, I ran into this when I was having some new shooters at the range. I was showing them all the great things about the AR platform, and we ran into an issue where they pulled the trigger and 2 or 3 rounds exited the gun. And what was happening was that they were bump firing the gun because they weren't holding it completely firmly, and when they pulled that trigger, as soon as it went off, their finger didn't kind of continue pressing to the rear. It kind of bounced around a little. And I took it as an exercise to pull out my little GoPro and do some high-speed video just to see what was going on, making sure it wasn't something in the gun. And you can see their finger kind of flopping around in there as they let off these little bursts. So just kind of something to watch out for. Maybe a real high-speed 3-gun trigger isn't the best option for your taking new people to the range gun. So yeah, it's kind of got me thinking about whether that's something that I want to kind of hazard with a gun that I use so often, and maybe I'll kind of go back to a regular, like an ALG trigger or something like that. So we'll see how it goes, and definitely something to watch out for. You can spend some good money on a nice trigger, but just because it's a real expensive one doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be suited for your application.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just because you spend good money on it doesn't mean it's designed for what you're going to do with it.
Yep.
Well, excellent tip. And I think at this point it's time to kind of unveil our main topic. It's something that we've had a lot of calls for. It's something that I think virtually everybody I know who has something to do with our black rifle has invested some time trying to figure out what's best for them. And that would be the sling. It's an integral part of everything we do with the rifle because, frankly, it's not real fun to just kind of manhandle the thing around all the time. Sometimes you need to have a sling to help support it. Sometimes you need a sling to help you shoot accurately. Sometimes a sling takes the weight off your shoulders and helps you.
Sometimes your gun stops working, you got to switch to a different gun, and you don't want to just toss your shiny new AR down into the dirt.
Well, there is that, yeah. But, when you have a government-issued AR, it's never shiny, and dumping it in the dirt is what they teach you to do. Of course, when you spend your money and not the taxpayers' money, it's a different thing.
Yep. So, yeah, we're going to get right into this. We're kind of going to cover the different kinds of slings that are on the market. There's 1, 2, 3 points. Just kind of go over what those mean. We're going to talk about the different materials that you'll find. We're going to get into how those slings hook into your gun, where they hook into your gun, what the pros and cons are, some of the ways that you can use slings to better your shooting experience. And then we're going to get into some responses that we got from fellow hosts here on the Firearms Radio Network when we asked them, what kind of slings do you guys use? So let's get into it.
Well, to begin with, there are 69 different slings for sale on the Brownells website. So I think that if you need a sling, they may very well be able to handle every one of your needs.
Yep, and it's a little overwhelming. You kind of flip through, and it's like, okay, I've got some filters here. The first thing I can narrow by is color. I got 59 black ones. I got 12 tan ones. But beyond that, it's kind of overwhelming if you don't know what you're looking for.
Well, let's kind of set some ground floor principles and talk about the types of slings. So I was exposed at a time when all you had were 2-point slings. And the 2 points were, very precisely defined on your rifle. So everything has evolved a lot more from that place to what we have today. So how would you describe a 1-point sling?
Basically, it counts the number of points touch the gun. And so a 1-point sling, it might wrap around your body in a loop, but then when it comes down to connect to the gun, it's only one connection. And you can have it connect up into the buttstock somewhere, or on the receiver end plate, or wrapped around the buffer tube or something like that, but there's only 1 point. And what that offers you is a platform that is a little more mobile than a 2-point sling. A 2-point connects to the gun at the front and the back of the gun most often in 2 different positions. And so the gun is a little more secure, but it might not offer the flexibility that you're looking for if you want to move that rifle maybe from strong side to support side, or to kind of move it around a little more flexibly. The 2-point, you're a little more closed in. If you need to switch shoulders, sometimes you got to kind of hop a shoulder out of it and just dangle it around your neck like a necklace. So the 1-point, I've seen guys using it a little more kind of in tactical situations,
right,
where they're shooting around different barricades and switching shoulders and doing stuff like that. It's a little more mobile.
Well, it's fair to say that basically it mounts around the shoulders like say a messenger bag, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're going to have it come over top of one of your shoulders, depending on your handedness, and the other side is going to come up behind you on the opposite side of your chest.
Yeah, and you could probably unclip it from the gun, and it would just kind of hang there. It can go on and off of the gun pretty quickly in most instances, and it's not like it's going to fall off your body. Like if you wanted to just put your sling on, you could do that, and then you could clip the rifle into the sling.
So that allows you to basically detach yourself from the rifle, use your hands.
Without having to kind of fight the sling off of your body.
Right. Or have the sling attached to the rifle and have it dangling with your hands free and the rifle still within easy reach of your operating hands. So
right. And that kind of brings me into the 2-point sling. When you're looking at the difference between the two, I already mentioned that there's kind of some security differences, that the 2-point you can crank down a little bit tighter and have it hang up against your body, and if you're running around or climbing a ladder or kind of moving around a little more, that gun is going to stay more in contact with your body, whereas in a 1-point situation, it's going to be flopping around. You don't really know where that muzzle is going to end up because it's going to be bouncing around so much.
Right.
And so there's some issues with the 1-point. The 2-point gets it up close to your body, in tight, and it lets you kind of do a couple more things if you want to get involved with the sling and wrapping it around your arm and kind of using it as another point of contact.
So in essence, it would still kind of wrap around your body like that messenger bag, but instead of the two ends of the sling coming to one point and finding an attachment to your rifle, you'd have each point attached at different places on your rifle. So one might be on the handguard and the other one might be on the buttstock. So
right. In a one-point sling, there's a loop of sling that goes around your body and then connects to the gun. In a two-point, there's a loop of sling plus gun that goes around your body.
Now, on the 2-point, I mean, you know, there is a type of sling that will do both. It will configure itself as a 1-point and then allow you to configure it as a 2-point. And so what people are basically trying to do is live up to the expectations of either set, 1-point users or 2-point users, or those that find the ability to switch from either type a real important convenience for them in whatever they're doing. Now, 3-point sling is something that I'm not all that familiar with, so tell me what you know about those.
Yeah, it's not something that I've run before. From what I've seen guys doing, it's almost like a combination of the two. It's like a 2-point plus a 1-point gets you 3 points. And it's not that it connects to the gun in 3 points. It's connected to the gun just like a 2-point sling, but rather than having that loop that connects to the gun go around your body, there's another loop that connects to that loop. So you're sitting inside of one loop, which is connected in 2 points to a 2-point sling on the gun.
And so that span that goes from...
And if it sounds confusing, it's because it is confusing.
So you've got a span of sling that goes from your buttstock straight up to your handguards. You've got another span of sling that goes from the buttstock around you and then connects on that first span of sling.
Exactly.
And slide up to the front where the handguard is and back to where the buttstock is. So you would essentially have in that one sling something that could transition without being detached from the buttstock up to the handguard and giving you a 1-point sling to a 2-point sling transition.
Yep.
Which to me seems a little too complicated.
It seems like a little much. I haven't seen guys use them very much.
And you know, I think that some of the slings we'll talk about later will probably highlight how this has been addressed by manufacturers.
Yep.
So, you know, the biathlon sling.
Yeah, this is one that I've got for my precision bolt gun. I picked it up in this last year. I'm going to try it for hunting season. And it almost converts your rifle into a backpack. That's the best way to describe how it looks. There's 2 padded loops that go over your shoulders, and then the gun is hanging behind you with the muzzle straight up in the air. And it's super comfortable for hiking around with a gun on your back. We'll have to see how it is with a pack as well, if it kind of fights or if we can get them both working together. And there's some interesting kind of extra loops involved that you can get your arm wrapped around for support if you need to be shooting your game offhand.
Well, and obviously, if you've ever watched the biathlon, I mean, I'm a shooter. I like the biathlon. It's something that I like to watch when the Winter Olympics come on. You've seen these guys in this very custom, purpose-built rig, and it's an interesting expression of a sling and how you can use it in precision shooting. So you have to let me know how that works out for you.
Yeah, we'll do.
And the next one you have here is really kind of going back into the pages of yesterday. It's the M1907 leather sling.
Yeah, this is one of my buddies at Iron Shaft Industries brought this up to me. I was asking around about different slings, and he mentioned that this was kind of the gospel of slings according to Appleseed. And yeah, I guess I wish Anthony was here to tell us a little bit about that, because I think he's probably the only one that has experience with them.
Oh no.
Oh, have you been at Appleseed too?
No. I mean, this is how basically the rifle competitors used to sling up until the point that they. I think that there is still a very big following in the sling and the competitive shooting sports when it comes to the very basic surface rifle competitions. But I mean, this is the standard by which all slings are measured as far as marksmanship training in the Marine Corps and things of that sort. The rifle teams still use this.
Yeah, the way he explained it to me was that you detach it from the rear of the gun, you put your support arm through a loop, and then you tighten it down, and there's like this triangle inside of a triangle, and it's not quick, but it's a lot better than just like twisting your arm up inside a 2-point.
Yep. And they actually taught us how to do the same thing with what ended up being the web sling that they integrated. I'm assuming post World War II, well, probably post Vietnam, up until today. But it's just your standard black web sling that they gave us, and they did the same thing. You detach it from the rear, you put your arm in, and you cinch it up tight, and you have a place for your hand to rest under the front sling, and you can get that in there, and it'll very, very surely cut the circulation off in your hand and put big bruises in your arm, and you've got that thing so tight that in order to put it up to your shoulder, you have to kind of put your non-supporting hand on the buttstock and push it forward and into your shoulder. So it gets tight. And I was talking to Michael C., the new web host, or the new podcast host of the Competitive Rifle Podcast, and the convention is coming around to the idea that maybe slinging it up so tight that you're cutting circulation isn't a good thing. But yeah, they teach all true marksmen how to use that sling that way. So yeah, it's a wonderful part of shooting history, and to the degree that you can get in there and understand how to sling up and get your rifle set up, it's a great way to do it.
Well, cool. The next thing I got here listed is the different materials and kind of construction methods that you're going to run into. Some of the kind of bargain bin airsoft style 1-points that you run into are a little flimsy, and they got stretchy stuff inside of them, and I don't really have much experience with stretchy slings. Have you ever run something like that?
I haven't.
I just don't really like the idea of my gun bouncing around that much.
Well, I think it's bungee, and maybe to set the predicate, a lot of this is like a heavy nylon webbing. Well, the ones that I've seen, and it's kind of that tubular nylon,
right?
Kind of rolled flat or iron flat, and so there's a lot of strength in the material. Whoa. I'm going to stop shaking my desk there. There's a lot of strength in the material, but of course, you can put some, like a string of bungee in the middle of a stretch of it, sew it and bar tack it, on two ends, and now you've got a crinkled up piece of stretchy sling. And, I'm with you, JW. I don't know that that's necessarily something that I'm all that comfortable.
There's some benefits to having a sling that's a little more rigid that you can apply some force against. You'll also find some that are padded, whether that's for carrying heavier guns or whether that helps you out if you're carrying your rifle for a long time. If it's a long day at the range or out hunting or something like that, you could get a little extra padding. One that I just heard about recently was a sling with Nomex, fireproof Nomex on the front part of it that you use when you're slinging a M240. And it's because the barrels get so hot that if the sling laid across it, it'd melt right through. And so yeah, the lav, Mr. Larry Vickers was going into this on a recent video he put up about the 240, and they designed a sling that wouldn't melt on the front. So there's some cool stuff out there to solve the unique problems of those of us with access to the 240.
Right. Yeah, all the 10s and 20s of them in the civilian world.
Yeah, but I mean, most of what you're going to find when you're shopping is either nylon or leather.
Right.
I don't have any leather, but it's probably because I don't have a bunch of hunting rifles. That's kind of where you find them most of the time.
Or an M1907.
There you go.
Yeah, I've got actually the M1907 is very commonly seen on the Garands, and the CMP did not issue one with their Garand. They issued the web sling that I'm more familiar with, but I have every intention of grabbing one as soon as I get a chance. So I'm going to see what I can see when I get one. Well, let's talk about attachment points. I think that you and I have probably tried out every single attachment point we can find on the internet, haven't we?
Well, I've seen a couple different ones. I guess the first one that is probably the most traditional for the hunting crowd is the sling or bipod studs. You're going to find one in the back, and it's real fancy, maybe two up front, one for your sling and one for your bipod. That's how my Savage was, and I used it. I still use it just like that. I have a little swivel adapter that goes right through the stud. Sling hooks onto there, and then the other stud up front, a bipod, just hooks right into. So.
And I'll go so far as to say that I actually have a Yankee Hill Machine quad rail on one of my rifles.
Mm-hmm.
They make a stud, sling stud, bipod stud, on a little, I guess, a rotating gimbal. And so I actually have a hunting sling link on there, and I've got my sling connected to it. So
there you go. Yeah, I use one of those studs for a, I guess it's a Harris bipod on my Scar. So yeah, I mean, you'll find those on all the bolt guns. ARs, not so much.
No, but you can do it if you work towards it.
Right.
If you
kind of
make it happen.
Kind of the next one that you're going to see is the strap slots, either in your buttstock, whether it's just kind of the standard one that came with a plain lower. There are probably a couple little horizontal openings, or maybe a metal loop at the bottom of it. And that's for securing just a plain sling right through it that's going to be permanently attached to that gun. And then the front of it, I guess, you could kind of tie around the barrel. Is that what's meant to be done with the web slings?
I've seen a piece of kit that actually attaches to the front sight base.
Okay.
And it can attach there. Now, this is kind of, I think, early 2000s, mid-2000s. I don't know that I've seen it recently. But, yeah, I think it was a very common way of setting that up in the military.
Yeah, and I mean, there's like Picatinny adapters, too, that give you kind of an oval opening that you can weave your sling through as well. And so that's going to be a little bit more of a permanent solution going through the buttstock and then up through something on your rail system or your front sight base. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty much bomb-proof. There's nothing really to fail. It's just solid nylon. You're resting on the strength of the nylon, and can't imagine any of us are going to pull the threads out of that anytime soon.
No.
But yeah, if you want to get a little fancier and make your sling a little more modular so you can take it on and off, maybe switch it between guns, you can get that sling to go through an adapter that's on some sort of flush cup, QD mount, push button sort of a release. And
right.
So these cups can either go into holes that come on like a Magpul stock. There's just kind of holes already there that these QD buttons hook into. I don't know the technical terms for these things. I'm sure I'm going to get ripped apart in the comments. What do you call those little things?
Well, they're flush cups.
Okay, flush cups. Well, there you go. There's one for maybe the butt stock, and then one for kind of up front.
Well, in our MLE stock that we're going to put on the rifle, there are, I believe, 6 spots to put one of those.
Wow.
3 port, 3 starboard. So that gets you on that stock a great deal of variety. But you attach a Magpul flush cup, and you can make it ambidextrous by choosing an additional piece, and it's going to have it on both sides. And the quick detach points are really gaining such a degree of popularity that people are starting to mill them into the lowers, mill them into the rails, mill them into the key mod rail pieces. So you're seeing an enormous abundance of QD points on everything.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, there's what we're talking about are kind of the QD sling swivel push button guys. You could also go into more of like a HK hook, which is just kind of a hook with a trapper on it so that it's not going to fall off, and that'll hook through any sort of little opening, whether it's kind of built in like on the Scar, or whether it's something that's an opening on a QD sling swivel that you can just clip right into. So those are kind of the options. If you're shopping at Magpul, I know you can choose any one of those as the finishing of the bottom of the sling.
Right.
Same thing when I got that biathlon sling. You could either get the one with the QD cups, or you could get one with HK loops.
Well, let's talk about placement. So we all have seen, more than likely, a way to place them on the stock. And today, that idea of stock placement is just, expanding pretty rapidly. So you can use the QD that are mounted at various points on the stock. There's the slots for the webbing to go through to be tied in. Some of the old A2 stocks would have an actual piece of strapping that would come around and cinch up on the buttstock, which would have a loop for your webbing to go through.
Yeah, that's how I do it on my shotgun.
Yeah. And, of course, the traditional A2 stock has a place on it where you can put a clip, and it'll hook your webbing into the stock. You can also just run a plain old piece of webbing through it. I can't really think of too many more options that I've seen as far as how to connect to your stock itself. But
yeah, you already mentioned all the flush cups that guys are starting to build into the stocks.
But the receiver end plate seems to be where a lot of thought's being put into what to do with your stock. And I see just an enormous number of things going on with that.
Yeah, I really like that. That's what I have on all my ARs. I use the ASAP plate, I think it's called, from Magpul, and it's just a replacement to your receiver end plate. Pretty easy to use when you're doing your build, or to switch out if your castle nut's not permanently in there. And
your ASAP, that's just a piece of, it's an end plate that has a piece of thick bar welded to it. It's probably, what, 1/8 of an inch, good steel.
Yeah, it's almost like a handrail hanging off the bottom of it.
And then a chain link that's on it, so that link can switch from the right side to the left side and back, and so it just
kind of dangles there and floats around, and it gives you a place for you to hook into, whether it's a HK hook or whether it's something a little tighter, and it gives you a point to hook into on the back of the gun. You see that all the time when guys are running the one-point setups, because it's very flexible and it lets you switch from arm to arm real
Right.
quickly.
Well, more than that, I mean, you and I being lefties, I mean, you remember when you'd look for those clip-ins and they'd all be for the right side shooters? You'd try to look for an end plate that was a left-handed clip-in.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of a pain. And then people started thinking, well, hey, let's make it right for both kinds of shooters. And the ASAP is like the ideal.
Now, what does the Noveske one look like?
Well, the Noveske one basically, in that place, the void in your lower, where you're going to orient your end plate, Noveske has milled out that spot for a QD.
Okay.
So it just fits right in the end, in that spot, through the end plate, and you're attached. So of course it's going to ask you to, basically get a QD point where you're going to have your sling attached and put it in there. And I've used a D-ring, which is kind of a little less material than you'd find in your standard detachable sling mount. And I've used something that's kind of like a half circle. Or no, it's a quarter circle. So it's a little 90-degree angle, and it's completed at an arc from the 2 points. So both of those, for me, kind of fit the purpose of that ASAP plate, because I can use it left or right depending on what my needs are to point. Because
it's centered right in the middle and the bottom.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, one of the benefits to go into a QD system like that is that you don't have that chain link kind of flopping around. It's probably the noisiest thing on my gun. If I'm moving it around or whatever, and if I'm collapsing the buttstock to pack it up inside of my tennis racket case, if the chain link isn't off to one side or the other, the buttstock won't collapse all the way, and then it won't fit in my tennis racket case. So there's some improvements that have been made from that loop, and kind of going to a QD system seems to be the next hot thing.
Yeah. Well, so when it comes to the rail, I have probably half a dozen different screw-on, screw-in, attach at some point, depending on the rail system, QD points for my rails. And whether it's for a hook or the little quick detach mounts, I really don't know that I have a preference of one over the other, but inevitably each one of them takes up a little chunk of rail space. And they never seem to fit exactly where you want them to fit without conflicting with something else that needs to be on that very exact piece of rail. So
yeah, I've got one of those RSAs from Magpul, which is very low profile from the top of the rail, but it sticks up to interfere with anything on the adjacent rail.
Right.
So if you've got a D-ball or something like that, you can't really get it too close to that. I ended up running mine fairly close to the kind of shooter side of the rail, so closer to the mag well than out to the end of the gun, and it works well for me, but I don't know, it seems a little bigger than necessary.
Right. Yeah, I've got a Daniel Defense QD point, which I like a lot, but because it's going to basically fit on a piece of rail, it's really a lot bulkier than most of the other solutions I've seen, because it just clamps on the rail and it's sticking right out there, just a big old chunk of steel or aluminum, whatever it's made from, and there's no getting around that. That's going to interfere with kind of your dynamic of working the rail space there. But it's a QD point. It was I think it was one of the earliest things that I found that would do that and allow me to move it, but I kind of took it off, and I used some of the Magpul devices more recently than I have that.
Yeah, the other thing that would be really cool is to get a rail system that has the flush cups built into it.
Right.
And I know Daniel Defense makes some like that. I ended up choosing the original light rail for my build, and so it didn't have them built in, but the new ones do, and kind of jealous of those.
Mega Arms had milled some of those into their new megalithic, their MTS, and they looked really nice. You know, they're right at kind of the, you know, just forward of your upper receiver. You know, so they're kind of at the beginning of the run of your rails.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you have to be used to clipping in your 2-point sling that close to your receiver.
Yep.
But you know, I don't know that that's necessarily a problem. I would assume it would.
That's how I do it. So
I would assume it would be based on what you're comfortable with, and that's probably about entirely what you're training with. So I don't know that people are going too much further out. I mean, of course, when you're talking a standard rifle, it's got a sling swivel that's sitting right there under your, you know, front sight base, and I don't know if those are really being used in a traditional sense, the way that we would imagine them being used because of all of these different kinds of slings. I mean, they just may be dangling there as, you know, convenient bottle openers whenever the opportunity arises.
yeah, you know, that RSA that I've got would probably open a bottle. I have not tried that.
Well, you know, next time we have an episode about, you know, rail attachments and the things you can get, we'll have to, you know, bring out our tactical bottle opener that you can mount to your Picatinny.
Yeah, with a tax stamp behind it.
That's right. That's right.
Well, cool. We kind of alluded to this part of the discussion throughout, but let's get into specific usage of slings.
All right.
Obviously, there's the fighting gravity side of it. It's just a way to hang your gun, and whether that's because your gun went down from a malfunction or from going dry and you're transitioning to pistol, and it just easily drops right down and it's ready for you, or whether you're got some other task at hand, you need to read a map or eat some Skittles or whatever you're doing on the range,
or
the sling's there for you.
20 kilometers for night maneuvers, and you need both hands so that you don't fall over for the 6th time with your, you know, 80-pound pack and all the rest of your 80s era deuce gear, and you know, sling's invaluable. It's a really important part of it all.
Right. I think one of the important aspects of it is for it to be removable. I've really benefited from that, I guess, when I pack my rifles up and having a sling to deal with and trying to fold it up inside of something. It just gets to be kind of a pain.
Right.
So I guess that's one of the things I look for when setting up a sling system. As far as while you're shooting, we mentioned placement of it on the rail. I like it a little closer to the mag well when I'm running 2-point,
Right.
and that lets my because it's coming up under my arm and going up to the gun, it lets my support hand not really have to fight with anything. The sling is closer to me than my support hand, and it's just kind of out of the way.
Right.
If I want to kind of crank down and push against the sling, I can get down in there with my support hand, and it's been a good spot for it. When it's out at the end of the gun, I end up kind of fighting with it, and as I apply pressure to the gun, the sling's kind of slipping off my back, and having it a little closer has been a better solution for me.
You know, one of the things that really has always been ingrained in me when it comes to shooting the black rifles, using the sling as a support mechanism for you know, creating a good stable shooting base. So for me, that is more of what I'm using that sling for. And you know, I still, you know, sling up and practice that because it to me, it helps me, you know, stay in touch with those fundamentals of marksmanship. You know, obviously the way that the rifles are being used in this day and age, are far different from what I was trained to use the rifle for. So I've tried several slings. I've got a couple of favorites that I like, and JW, like you, I like the 2-point idea where I can basically get it cinched in close, and I like one that allows me to transition into a single point because there is that comfort in just kind of having it hanging off to the side here, and kind of in that neutral muzzle pointed at the ground orientation. So for me, that kind of goes back to the idea that your rifle's either pointed up in the air or straight down at the ground, and so having it always kind of pointed outbound at an angle, I'm not real comfortable with that if I have to move around other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the ability to transition a sling into a 2-point into a 1-point, and then kind of have it a little more controllable by my dominant hand when I'm not having to do anything.
Yeah, that brings up kind of one of the things that we didn't cover as far as aspects of slings is the adjustability.
Yeah.
It's what you're going to find in a lot of the tactical-oriented slings is some sort of quick adjust system. In the Magpul ones, it's just kind of an extra loop of fabric that you can grip onto and slide up and down. And the keepers for the sling, they aren't quite as aggressive as others, so it lets you slide it up and down. It's a little easier to adjust. I know the Vickers ones kind of have a little metal keeper with a tab on it that you can release and then crank down, and that's something that's going to be real helpful if you want to transition from kind of patrolling with your gun down up tight against your body where it's not going to be flopping around. If you're running or something like that, it'll bring the gun in tight, and it's not going to be the muzzle's going to be where you want it to be. Whereas loosen it up a little bit when you're actually using the gun, and finding some system where that can happen smoothly and quickly rather than cumbersomely and annoyingly. Something that you're not going to have to weave nylon in the field.
Right.
That just lets you grab something and pull it loose.
And I think it is important to stress that there is nothing in the use of these slings that is intuitive. They just don't lend themselves to some, ease of operation by virtue of the way they're designed. You can't transition from your rifle to a pistol, with a rifle kind of dangling on the front of your chest and not have to figure out how you're going to work through those steps. That's why, our men and women in the armed forces and men and women in police and other situations where they're required to use these rifles are always training on how to use the system with what they are comfortable using, which is whatever sling they've chosen. And they go through the drills. They learn how to, put it on and take it off and move it aside and, work with it and,
And it's one of those skill sets that you can work with a dry gun at home without burning any ammo and without risking any. It's very low risk to work your sling skills at home with a dry gun.
And I think that if you don't get at least a fundamental understanding of what your sling is expecting you to do to work the sling so that it can do its job, if you don't spend that time figuring those things out, you're going to be frustrated if you do, have the enviable opportunity like JW always seems to have to go and do more and more training, more and more ranges.
Yeah, and I mean, try it on with different clothing, whether you've got a jacket on, whether it's just a t-shirt, if you're going to wear a plate carrier or some sort of chest rig. Figure out where the gun sits in relation to your mags and in relation to whatever fancy dancy pouches you got hanging off you, it might kind of catch up on that big old med pack that you've got hanging off the side. Maybe you want to shuffle your kit around a little bit so the sling kind of lays where it needs to.
Right.
You know, there's some slings that actually weave into the plate carrier, into your shoulder straps, things like that. I haven't gotten into that yet. There's definitely some options out there, though. But yeah, you got to try it in the different conditions that you're going to use it. If you're going to go out hunting with it, try tossing your winter jacket on and see if the sling is going to work for you. Maybe it's not going to be long enough to go over the top of everything. If you want to leave a backpack on, toss your backpack on and then throw your sling on and see if that works. So
Right.
there's easy steps to make sure you're prepared for when you're going to have to use that sling.
Absolutely. And you know what? Don't forget that, just because there are a number of good choices out there, a number of kind of evolutions on the idea of a sling and tactical slings and all the different things you can do with them, don't forget that the old-fashioned, 2-point rifle, hunting rifle type sling is still just as valid today as it was before. And it doesn't require you to do anything more to use the sling than you did when your father and your grandfather taught you how to hunt. So,
yep.
Don't forget those are still good choices.
Well, yeah, we've got the privilege of getting the input from a lot of guys here on the rest of the network. Reed put out a call and got quite a response here. So I guess we better just hop right into it. The first thing I got here is from Doug Hartley on the Power Factor show. What do they go over there? I don't think I've ever listened to that show before. I imagine it's some sort of competition pistol show.
Well, the Power Factor show is one of the new shows, and the unfortunate difficulty of putting together your own show and keeping up with the things that are AR related is that I don't have all of the time that a true fan would to go out and keep up on what all the other shows and their hosts are doing. So I know that Doug is knocking them out over there at the Power Factor show. So, but he says, I use a Viking Tactics 2-point sling on my long guns. Gives us a link. He likes the Mark I. He says, I like them because they are really adjustable for my needs and are robust and reasonably priced. So
yeah, I think you're gonna hear that come up a couple times. I know Viking Tactics really kind of have their act together and have some nice slings. And like I mentioned, they've got kind of a quick adjust system with a pull on it with some metal hardware. So they're only $40.
I am looking up the Koitak single-point sling.
Yeah, this is from Ryan Cross. He says he likes the bungee kind from Koitak. They're single point with the option to swap out the attachment point for clips, swivel studs, etc. So it looks like that's kind of a modular system that you can, if you're running HK loops or something like that, the clips, you could do that. And if you decide to upgrade to some flush cups or put it on your hunting rifle with a swivel stud or whatever, it'll kind of switch between them.
And it's a very reasonably priced one. Let's see, Nick over at Practically Tactical, he says, hi Reed, I currently have the Magpul MS3 multi-mission sling for running in a single point configuration. I tend to prefer 1 point as I think it gives a freer range of motion and makes using my hands for non-firearms moves better. He says, I am, however, starting to look at 2-point slings and learning how to use them more effectively. I think that is why many people use a 1-point sling. I think I will be buying the Wave the Gun sling, and he links us to a YouTube video. So I don't know about Frank Proctor's sling. We'll have to let you all look that up when you get a chance.
Yeah, one of the cool things about those Magpul slings is you can run them either way. You're not stuck in 1 point, and if you want to try out 2-point and you have a place to clip it a little further up the gun, you can switch between the two, and that's kind of what I've found myself doing as well. If I'm doing some sort of competition style thing and I'm gaming it, I might do it in 1 point. Whereas if I'm being a little more reasonable, I might kind of stick to 2 points.
Right. Well, let's see. Our next one is from Savage1R.
He says, I like 2-point slings because that's what I'm used to having, and it secures the rifle well. I recently got a 1-point sling for my AR to try out, and it's okay. I'm just not a fan of the rifle bouncing around and having to hold it with one hand. And I definitely know what he's talking about.
Yeah, that goes to the point about that.
Yep. Especially when muzzle discipline is so important. A 2-point you can really cinch down, and that gun's going to be right where you left it. Whereas the 1-point, you're walking around, it's kind of bouncing between your legs, and
right.
Gets
well, I mean, I don't think you can just let loose of it if you're going to be moving. You have to have.
You definitely have to have at least a hand on it.
All right, Jeremy P. writes in. He says, Condor Combat Bungee Sling. In its 2-point configuration, I like it because when it's set up, it falls in front and keeps the rifle at the ready, but doesn't swing around as much like a 1-point sling does, and can also be adjusted for use with body armor. So,
yeah, that's one of the benefits of doing the bungee system, is that it kind of tightens up when the rifle's just hanging on its own, and if you want to deploy the rifle, you kind of stretch it out, and yeah, I could definitely see the advantages to that.
Well, you know, and Jeremy is one of our fighting leathernecks, so I'll trust his opinion on the matter. Michael C. comes from the same origins as well, so he writes in and says, for tactical or patrol, or for patrolling the streets of Iraq or Afghanistan, he likes the Viking Tactical Sling, the Viking Tactics Mark II. He says, I wish there had been a padded version when I used it. So he's talking about the padded version as opposed to the non-padded.
Yeah, a guy I shoot with here locally, I just met up with him this morning at the range, and that's definitely his sling of choice as well. He gave the same feedback when he was contracting overseas. He was using kind of the basic Viking Tactics sling, and he saw these fancy new padded ones and was a little jealous.
Did you tell him to go buy one?
Oh, I think he definitely has since they came out.
See, Michael C. says, for competition, I like the Turner leather sling with the numbers. So you can get that at Creedmoor Sports. And let's see. For the Grands, you have to use the 48. For the AR, you need to use the 56-inch. So let's see. He likes the Cobra Tactical Bat Sling, just kind of as a curiosity point. And he says that is what the British Royal Commandos use. I might have to look at that.
Yeah, I was trying to look at their photos. There seems to be something wrong with the webpage.
Well, we will sort that out.
But it's got some clips and some interesting.
Well, Anthony M.
He also mentioned that if you want to get fancy, you can actually kind of knit one out of paracord. And
yeah.
Creedmoor Sports has some of those. I know I've seen them on Etsy and places like that, where people get creative with their paracord.
I'd be afraid to buy a sling from someone who's trying to be creative. You know, I think
You know, my mom knit me a suppressor cover for my can to keep so like it doesn't get hot, so I can put it on and off without burning my hands.
Did she?
So I wouldn't trash talk the DIY solutions. There's some cool, crafty solutions out there.
Yeah, but did she make it out of yarn or Nomex?
Yeah, it was yarn.
Nylon yarn is going to just melt itself to the exterior.
No, it's wool. I mean, lambs won't just like light up when you catch them on fire, will they?
Have you ever lit up a lamb?
No.
Well, I think this would be the test.
This paracord one, there's a photo of the maker, and R. Lee Ermey. So.
Well, that makes me more comfortable.
Yeah, he's got to have something going for him.
Well, let's see. Anthony M., who is one of our supporting staff members, he says, "Hi, Reed. I'm a fan of the Magpul MS4 sling."
Damn, MS4. Fancy.
Yeah, well, the difference between the MS3 and the MS4 is the clips. The MS4 uses the QD on everything, and it's got a little 3-point doohickey that turns it from a 2-point into a single point. There's QD as well. Whereas the MS3 is just all little clippy hooks.
Got it.
I think I'm going to go with the MS4 sling myself. I've got an MS3.
Yeah, I'm not upgraded to QD cups just yet, so.
I've got more QD cups on everything I have than I have hook clips, so.
Yeah.
I might have to go that route.
Yep, he mentions it's nice that you can switch up between the two, and the adjustment of the sling itself is fairly easy with the loop on the sling. So. Sam A. here, he says, as far as slings go, I only have one. I don't consider the tissue paper thing nylon sling the rifle came with a sling. And he uses the Magpul MS3. Says it works great with the ASAP plate or any other one-point anchor. The benefit in this sling is versatility. It can be unhooked and utilized in 2 points. I'm a big guy, 6'7", 295, and its ergonomics leaves something to be desired. It digs into my neck a bit. Yeah, so that's either you could find a padded sling or something to kind of go over the top of it, or maybe take a couple gadgets off your gun to lighten it up.
Well, and I think that kind of brings up a point. None of these slings is like buying a $1,500 optic. So it's okay to take that darn thing to a tailor or find one of the outfitters that'll basically work on the nylon stuff and have them sew a pad to it. That's okay.
As long as it's black, though, right?
Well, sure, it's got to be black. I mean, that's like practically proper, isn't it? I mean, don't they have like the tactical fashion police that'll come out and ticket you for having things in the wrong color?
Next we have Brad West, and he did a little bit of self-promoting here. He says, here's what I use for its versatility and ruggedness. I like that it can change from single to 2-point, and it's super fast to adjust. And he put a link in to a Firearms Insider review, gun and gear reviews, that he wrote, and he gave it an 8 out of 10, and an 8.5 out of 10. The community has rated it 8 out of 10, so there's some great feedback on it. And he went through, he's got photos, he's got a great review of the sling here, so you can see it in further detail. So between the Magpul and the Vikings, I think we kind of have some winners there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to get a Viking. Stephen Remy, our vice president of marketing, he likes the VTAC. And, Stephen is, of course, he has a military background as well and law enforcement. And he writes basically that the VTAC original, it is super adjustable on the fly, so you can adjust it to your gear when shooting, then make shorter to sling on your neck, on your back when you need both hands and your whole front of body free. He says it's inexpensive too, and it's awesome. So he likes.
Yeah, that's one thing you could do with your gun, as long as you kind of don't have anybody standing right behind you to muzzle, is flip it all the way around and have the gun hanging on your back. Yeah.
Well, and let's see, what would the orientation be? Muzzle in the air?
Yep.
Muzzle be in the air. So I mean, that's a safe orientation if you're going to be able to get it swung around without having to worry about where your barrels.
Yeah, the range police might not be too happy with you swinging it back and forth, but
I think when you're in law enforcement, they can do some things the rest of us can't.
Yeah, Nikki T. She says, hello guys, here is one of my favorites, designed by Bill Rogers of the legendary Rogers Shooting School for Safariland. It's one of my favorites for men and or women. Easy to install and easy to use. Now, which one had she linked?
I went and looked at it, and
she put a YouTube video in. It's called the Safariland M4. Have you looked into it much?
I have not.
I just scrolled through the video and I saw somebody pull a lighter up. And they were burning it.
Is it made of Nomex?
No, it looks like nylon. It's like a single point with something that runs around your buffer tube. And, yeah, looks pretty comfy. It's got a nice cushion on it. It's just kind of looks like a proprietary little disconnect system for the 1-point. Yeah, there's like a plastic adapter that rather than having to take off your receiver end plate, you just remove your stock and slide it over your stock, and then it gives you a place to clip your proprietary QD socket into.
Well, he has a web page. Well, not, he has a Facebook page that's the Rogers Shooting School, and so you can see his setup there, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, Nikki also threw another vote in for the VTAC 2-point. So.
Well, I'm thinking that if we were going to take a hands-up vote, we'd probably have a tie between VTAC and Magpul slings.
Yep.
And whether it's an MS4 or an MS3, I'm going to call that essentially a same kind of sling. So there's the feedback for tonight from all of the Firearms Radio Network people we could get who would share an opinion about AR slings. So
yeah, I just want to say thanks to all of them for stepping up and getting back to us so quick, and for their insight. I know they've got a ton of experience, a whole lot more than me, and it's great to hear what's been working for them.
Well, and I'm kind of a law of averages kind of guy. 10 people like something, chances are there's something to it. When 1 out of 10
like... fan of the free market, huh?
I am. We know you have a choice when listening to podcasts, so thank you for listening to ours. When it comes down to it, we have a lot of experience. We have people who've been in the firearms industry forever and a day, a lot of people that have come up in the military, law enforcement. Great experience all around, and so I would say that among our respondents, we have a very good line of insight that is worth paying attention to and following up on. So, well, I think that pretty much covers tonight's episode. I did want to bring a reminder up. JW, I went and I looked at the feedback that we were getting as entries into the show.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed something curious.
Okay.
At last count, I had accounted for 33 5-star ratings where they did not leave written feedback. And I'm going to tell you why that's a problem. Because we don't know who they are. Because there's no name associated with them, there's no anything associated with them, so there is no way for us to follow up with them to say, hey, thanks for writing in, you just won a rifle. So I want you to know that if you are one of the listeners who gave us a 5-star rating but did not write some feedback down, then your entry cannot be drawn because we don't know who you are. You're just an anonymous 5-star rater. So please go back and try again. You can re-rate us, I understand. I don't know. I've never actually rated the show. So
Me neither.
So go back. If you intended to enter the contest and you didn't leave feedback, please try again. I would hate for you to miss out on a great opportunity because iTunes...
Yeah, I'm looking at it here in iTunes, and it looks like there's like a click to rate section for stars, and then right below that you can write a review. And so that's what's going to need to happen for an entry to get submitted. What was our count like last month we were trying to hit 300.
Before the contest, we were at, I believe, 296.
Yeah. What I'm looking at right here is 335 ratings.
You see?
So that's fantastic.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Very.
I'm scrolling through, and it's like 3 to 5 or 6 reviews every single day. That's great. And these are like solid reviews. This guy says, great podcast. I really enjoy all the hosts and the knowledge each host brings to the table. Looking forward to taking that new rifle build off your hands. Keep up the great work. Also would love to hear someone from Noveske come on and talk about John Noveske and the rifles that they put out. So, yeah, thanks so much for this feedback, guys. We're definitely going to go through it and take the feedback to heart and try to make some decisions based on it and all that. And, yeah, we love it. Keep it up.
But don't forget, go back and leave written feedback, because I want you all to have a good shot at taking home this rifle. I'm super excited about it, and you know, I would be heartbroken to think there's 33 listeners that will not get to do anything with the rifle because they forgot to leave written feedback. So please try again and make sure that happens. But I think with that, we're kind of done for the evening.
Yeah, we appreciate all the responses from the guys here on the network. But if you guys, listeners, have something that you like to use for a sling that's worked great for you, whether it's a different one or a new company that just started making them, we've got a ton of vets coming home with great lessons learned from the field, and I'm sure there's just a great sling waiting to be put onto the market. So if there's something that you've come up with or you've heard about, let us know about it. So you can get in touch with us at feedback@ar15podcast.com. You can go to the show notes and leave a comment there. We definitely, that just pops right up in my email inbox. So leaving a comment's a great way to get in touch. You can send us a recorded voicemail, the SpeakPipe plugin. I know Anthony's hard at work trying to get in touch with the SpeakPipe side of things. Like we've been talking about, you can subscribe and listen to us for free at firearmsradio.tv/iTunes. Leaving a review is going to enter you into the podcast. It's going to help us out in iTunes. And you can also enter the podcast by going to ar15podcast.com/winner, and that'll sign you up for the Radio Network's mailing list. If you leave feedback on Stitcher, that'll do the same. It'll get you an entry into the contest. Share your pictures with us on Flickr at flickr.com/groups/blackrifle. Make sure to follow us on Google+, and you can also watch us live on Monday evenings at about 10 o'clock Eastern at firearmsradio.tv/plus. All of these episodes are recorded in HD video quality and archived on YouTube at youtube.com/firearmsradio. You can follow the network on Facebook, facebook.com/firearmsradio. And be sure to check out all of our other podcasts on the network. We've got some fantastic hosts that put in a ton of time and energy, and it's just a great resource for sharing information that I know so many people have. So check out some of those other shows. Don't forget to visit Brownells through our affiliate link at ar15podcast.com/parts. And if you can't find something at Brownells, you can probably find it on Amazon. So if you go to firearmsradio.tv, there's going to be banners that you click on before you make any Amazon purchase, and we get to see a little tiny piece of it.
Well, listeners, we appreciate you. We want you to write in. We want you to tell us when we're way off base, or even just a little off base. But more than anything, we like to share what you have to say. So I know that this week was Father's Day. Everybody was busy with their little ones. I was too. Had a good weekend, but we did not have a lot of feedback. And you know, it's just not a good week if I don't hear from all of the listeners. So I guess everybody have a great rest of the week. We are going to continue to build our rifle, and we'll let you in on our next stage of the build next week. and we'll be planning this next show in the coming days. So, JW, have a good night.
Yeah, it's great talking with you.
All right. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.